Hey guys, welcome back to another part of the Mitchell build series. In this part, I'm going to be starting on the engine, some resealing and cleaning up, probably installing some of the parts that are off. I also think I found the reason this bike's been sold to me and the previous owner. It's had a couple owners after it's been taken apart. And I think it's the flywheel. The flywheel was very stuck on. I'll show you what tools I used to get it off, how I got it off, and I'll start cleaning it up. So here is the left side of the crank where the flywheel would sit. It's not that rusty. I do see a little bit, but I don't know why it was on that hard. Some of the tools I used to get it off. I started with this set, like a harmonic balancer kind of thing. It's just the 3 holes that pull it off. This is from Harbor Freight. It's a Pittsburgh. I think they probably make it better now. This is actually an old one. Here's the centerpiece. And it's actually not that bad. But the reason I couldn't get it off, here is the bolt, and right there, where it was in here, completely stripped out on this bolt. So this set kind of sucks. So, Grandpa to the rescue. I asked him about it. He says, oh, you can borrow my puller. This is how I got it off. This is a snap-on version of the same thing. And, of course, the bolt is not stripped, made of better quality steel and finer thread, so it's easier to get some torque. As you can see, there it is. It has the interchangeable tips to go in the detent on the crankshaft. And this is a snap-on one. And it screws into 3 points on the flywheel. The flywheel does have some rust, yes. So this will need to be cleaned up. And we'll start doing that. I laid out some cardboard and paper towels. Here is the flywheel. And I'll just be using some Scotch-Brite and some wire brush to get some of this off. It's already coming off a little bit. So here it is. It's not perfectly clean, but I just went till my rag was not dirty. So it's a little rough, but that's okay. It'll work great. Now, we'll get started on cleaning up the engine cases. So I'm starting to clean this engine up. I noticed right here, there's actually some remaining gasket material. So that'll have to get cleaned off. I'll scrape it and clean it up. Then we'll probably start by taking this off. So I have the cases cleaned decently. Mainly the gasket surface is what I'm worried about. Now let's get this electronic pieces out of here, all of them. Now this does have a timing adjustment, and there's a line right there, so I know how it goes back. Okay, 1 screw. Two screw. This is the 3rd screw. So I've got all 3 screws off. There was a little difficulty with one of them. It was kind of stripping. I just got a vice grip. It was able to get it off. Now this slid off easy. Not very damaged looking, except a little bit of corrosion on the bolts. That's okay. We'll set this aside. Now I'll probably take this neutral switch off and start doing the seals. Just 2 screws to get that off. And there's a gasket right here, which I'll replace. I do have that. And we can start removing these seals and putting new ones in. So first thing I want to do is change the shifter shaft seal. And the thing is with it is that it's actually hard to pull this in and out. The bike came with a brand new shift shaft. So maybe it's bent, you know, like this. That's why it's hard to pull out. I don't know yet. But I will pull it out. See, here it is. So I have gotten the shift shaft out of the engine. You know, I've seen other videos and I know there's no gears, nothing on this. It's just here. So it should just slide right out. This did not slide out. It took some hammering to get this out. And I figured out the reason. This is all messed up right here. And you want to see where it lines up. Right here is the drain bolt, you know, for your transmission oil. Here is about where that messed up part is. Right on top of the drain bolt. What it seems to me is that either the drain bolt fell out or someone thought they were upgrading it by putting like an automotive style with like the O-ring or something. Really, it's not an upgrade because it goes too far in, scratches up your shaft, and it makes it stick. So I'm sure when they were shifting, you would stick down or up. That's why they bought a new one, I think. Or someone bought a new one. So this would honestly be completely usable. Really, it could. I'll just file this down a little bit because there's no seal bearing riding on this. It's just open, exposed. As long as it's not messed up here and here, you're fine. So I could do that. I do want to put the new one on just because I have it. This can be like a spare if I bend it or something in a crash. The spring's gonna go on like this. Little side down, big side up like that. So now I want to take out this shifter shaft seal and replace it. So this one's not very hard to remove because there's no shaft in the way like these ones. Just gonna be extremely careful with the screwdriver. Now it comes. Actually, not that bad, really, for the rubberness soft of it. But it's nice to just replace. Now I'll clean this surface up. That's the Q-tip. Yep, lots of grime. that needs to be cleaned off. So I have the new seal right here. Exact same, of course, way cleaner and brand new. Almost there. It's actually going in nice and straight. Barely perfectly flush. The next one is going to be the left side crank seal. I have a new one right here. It even says left crank. Okay. How many packages does it need? Okay. Here is the seal. Looks like the same seal. So let's put it in. I have two little divots in here for the drill. I have an extension so I can actually be above. I could actually be above the crank. If not, the drill would be all the way down there and be at like an angle. I'm gonna drill it barely, then stick a couple screws in the holes, screw them in, and use some vice grips and try to pull it out. When I did the center punches, it actually moved down a little bit, the seal. So if it moved down that easy, I think it'll come out easy too. So let's drill this. Nice and straight. Speed 1. That still looks good. Not through yet, almost. Okay, it barely went through. No more than that. Stop. So now I'm gonna screw this screw in with the screwdriver, the Phillips one. Making sure I'm not scratching this outer area. Okay, that's good. Stop before I'm stop while I'm ahead. Now let's do the other side. almost. Okay, it barely like sunk down a little bit, so I know I'm through. I want to get minimal chips into that bearing, so I'm just gonna wipe off a little bit. Okay. Now we'll screw this screw in. I like how it feels. It feels like it has a nice bite to the screw. Not like it's barely holding on there. Now let's grab it with the vice grip. I got the seal out finally. It took a lot more effort than I expected it to. I got it out. Now I'm gonna clean it up to put the new seal in. Same thing as this seal, I just clean it up with a Q-tip, pretty simple. Here is the new seal that's gonna be put in. I put a little bit of grease on the inside. So now let's start putting this in. Lines up pretty easy because there's a center shaft. This socket is what I'm going to use. It's a really old 1 1/16, but it has a 3/4 drive, so the crank can actually stick through. If it was a 1/2 inch, it would not go through. Let's take this key out. It's going to fall. Okay. We can tap on this. It's going in. Trying to see any high spots, and it's actually pretty even. Tiny bit on that side. I think that's good. There's actually a little bit of rust on it from the socket. That's okay. We'll clean that off. But yeah, the left side crank seal is now installed. The next seal I want to do is this, which is the countershaft. Let's take this out. I'll actually use a seal puller. This was at Harbor Freight, I think. That was easy. Way easier compared to that crank seal. It's not actually that bad of condition, but since we have a new one, of course it'll be replaced. And I'll clean this up. I have it cleaned up. Something I noticed, I have this O-ring, final drive O-ring. And yep, there's an O-ring right there. Let me grab this. So let's put the new one on. This is a Kawasaki part, actually. which is weird. Usually you just buy the size, but it's super clean in there. Now we'll slide this on. Don't want to roll it. Want to carefully slide on. Make sure it's not spun. Perfect, perfect, perfect. That looks great. Now we can put the seal in. This is a Kawasaki part also. And I'll add a little bit of grease on the inside. I'm not like packing it or anything. I'm just spreading a little lubricant so it slides on easier. Like that. And we'll slip this on, making sure it's nice and straight. Not like that. Good. And I can use the same socket from before to pound this on. Wow. That one was not the straightest. It's like raised here, flat here. It's going on. That looks good. I can just wipe some of that socket rust off. And now we have the seals in. Now there is one problem. This is the clutch pushrod seal, which I did not find in my stuff. I looked a bunch of times, and I have a trip in a little bit. I really want to take this, so I will leave this seal. It's actually super soft still, so I think it'll be fine. I have one already coming, so I don't really think it'll be an issue. I think we can start reassembling now. First up, we have the neutral switch. And there's a gasket for it, brand new. It's stapled to a cardboard. There it is. Looks right. This can now go back on. And I'll use my GIS screwdriver and tighten this thing down. Why is that not wanting to go? That's in. I'll put this keyway in the crank. I don't want to lose it. Better on the bike than the bench. Okay. I didn't actually need to pound it on, just align it. Okay. Now what I want to do is put this on. And the timing marks are extremely easy. There's a line and a line. You line them up, done. Make sure it's seated down. Yep. So now I'll put these 3 screws in. Okay, now making sure it's aligned. Tighten down. Tighten down. And tight. So now we'll do the neutral switch. And the bolt's not even off, it's like slid up. I'm gonna take it off though to install. Okay, I dropped it. Put this in. Okay. I think the next thing I'll do is put this flywheel on. So I had some extreme trouble with this crank, like thread on the end of the crank. This nut would not screw on. It does now. Anyway, what happened is with that, all that pressing and hammering I had to do to actually get the flywheel off, it compressed the end of these threads right here, making it hard to screw on. So I've got a Dremel and file and kind of sanded the edge down, took it off the last 2 threads and ran a die over it, and it seems pretty good now. So let's put this flywheel on. Gonna put the key in. And line up the key on the flywheel. Don't want to let it slam down because it will magnet to it. So there's 2 washers, a flat washer, lock washer, and then the nut will screw on. I'll just use an impact gun and kind of zip it. That's good enough. Now this flywheel is on. Let's move on to something else. Now let's put this cover on. Here it is. If you remember, I stuck this Kawasaki logo back on. The original bolts that held it were JIS and extremely stripped. So I have these Allen from that bolt kit, so we could put this on. Here's the gasket. That's the right way. It's a Instead of a JIS screw, it's a 5mm hex. Okay, so I have these bolts all tight. Now I think the next thing would be this, which is the clutch push rods, and I'll put the other cover, which goes on top, which actually holds the worm thing. Next step is pretty simple. For these clutch push rods, here they are. The short one is a bigger diameter. The long one is shorter. So if this went in the seal, it's actually loose. The big one in the seal is perfect. So all you do is just drop it in. You actually hit the table because it goes all the way through. This one will go right on that. So I'm just installing a little bit of grease on the end, so when they spin a little bit, it's not wearing. Okay. Now we'll probably be putting on the gear. So here's the countershaft. Now will be this spacer into the greased seal, and it seals against that O-ring. Like that. Now it'd be time to put this gear on. This gear is a 14 tooth, which is stock and what comes with it. I am a bigger rider, and the trails I plan to go on are more slow, kind of steep. So I'm gonna gear down. Here's a 12 and a 13. I'll start with the 13 for now. And if I have to, I'll go to 12. So let's put this on. Now, this washer, which really I should replace, but I don't have one. So that will go in. And then screw the nut on. Sometimes it's hard to see with the camera. This washer has like a thing on it sticking up. And this gear has these two holes, which is to like bolt it down for a different kind of style. This hole's like a detent. This is what that sits into. So that will go like that. This notch thing goes into that hole. Then I screw the nut on. Like that. And I can just impact it on really quick. Like that. Now I'm gonna fold this tab up with like a screwdriver, and then I'll use the pliers to flatten it out. So I have this side lifted up a little bit. Now I can grab it and smush it up. Yeah, that looks great. Now it's flattened on the side of the nut, and we'll probably put this shifter in now. So when the shifter shaft was all messed up, it kind of messed up the hole when it was removed. So I'll have to clean that up a little bit with the Dremel. Here's this Dremel I got. I really like it. It's extremely small. Comes with this case with a bunch of different stuff. And quiet. This hole does not seal anything because there's tons of holes around it. It's mainly the other side that actually does the sealing. So it's not that big of a deal if it's bigger or anything. So it does look good. Now we could probably use a Q-tip to wipe it out a little bit. It feels smooth. So let's put this shaft in. It's cleaned up. Let's put this in. Put a little bit of lube. Now on this shaft, that spacer goes over. This, the crook of the spring goes towards the engine, like that, on the spacer. Make sure your spring doesn't disconnect. Like that. So I realized before putting this all the way in, I have a couple other stuff to do. Here's the idler gear that goes right here. 2 shims, 1 shim on this side, 2 go towards the engine, 1 up, then a snap ring is going to clip over that. I have this idler gear in. Time for this tachometer drive right here. It goes in from the top. I'm going to oil it up a little bit. And there's a shim on the bottom. The tachometer drive is in. Took a little bit of tapping, but now it spins nice and smooth. Now the worm drive for it is on this gear, and this part is the oil pump drive. So now we'll lube this up a little bit, like that. Put the shim down in there. And that spins nice. The next thing for this gear set would be the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter needs this big spring that goes over. This aligns with this area, so you make sure you're in the correct hole. Like if it was in this hole, it wouldn't stretch to click onto this. So you make sure you're in the top hole. Slide it in. This is the keeper, which goes through and into that. Now you slide this metal wire around until it fits into that. And there's a shim on the bottom. So this is now in with that shim installed. Now the end of the spring is sitting right here, and it clips onto here. So this will just stretch around. So I have this on, which is the neutral part. This is a keeper that holds this from going up and down. It took me a little bit to figure out how to put it in, but I got it. Now I'll put the shift shaft in finally. Here is the spring, and it goes around a pin. Both sides are kind of against a pin. And this keeper goes between the spring. This goes on the top stack, this goes on the bottom. Like that. Here we now have the rotary valve cover and a new seal to install. First thing I'm gonna do is put a little bit of grease on the inside. And I could probably use like a zip tie or something to spread it, because I ran out of Q-tips. Okay. So, grease inside the seal. Line this up. Make sure it's nice and straight going in and it looks good. This is a seal driver. It's a little high on that side. With the seal being installed on the cap, we can install the whole rotary valve assembly. First thing that goes on is actually a shim that goes in here, which is already on. Then this gear. It's actually not a gear, it holds the disc. And it goes over that pin right there. Then the rotary valve disc is going to go on. First, I want to lube it up. This is some 2-cycle oil. Okay, now the disc is going to go on. The next thing would be this. But this needs an O-ring in it first. So to put this O-ring on, I'm gonna put a little bit of grease on it. Okay, like that. Now here is the cap where I'm going to install my greased O-ring. with this O-ring installed, let's get it on. These pins are already in, and they go in these two holes. Okay, these are in. Now let's put the 6 GIS bolts to hold it down. Okay, 6 bolts are in. Now time for this spacer. But first, before the spacer, is a brand new O-ring. There it is, there's the part number. There's a shelf on the shaft that it kind of sits onto. And then the shaft, or the spacer, goes on top of it. So the O-ring does not go in there, it goes on top of this. I was reading the diagram backwards. This spacer goes inside the seal, like that. Now the O-ring goes on. This keyway goes into the crankshaft. And the key goes right onto this gear. So this is pressed all the way down. Time for the nut, the washer that you bend over. Here's the nut. That's good. Now we'll just grab this and bend it up. I use a screwdriver and kind of bent it up a little. Now I'll flatten it out. That looks pretty good. So here is where the rotary valve gets its oiling. With this pin, when the other cover's on, it goes through. And this O-ring is old and crusty. So we have a brand new one. Like that. So now it'd be time to install the clutch basket. Luckily it was all prepped for me, all brand new. Before we put it in though, we put the spacer into it, this gear, And then this washer is going to go on the bottom of the shaft and lower this down onto the shaft. Making sure it's meshed up with the rotary valve gear like the crank, and over here that idler, and it is. And then make sure this inner basket, fix a couple discs that came out. This goes inside like that. This lock washer goes in the hole. And I'm just gonna bend that up on this nut, which will go on. And it's a 19. I have that impacted on there. I just did it a couple times. Now bend. Actually, I'm gonna go a little more so that lines up. That's better. Bent the washer over that nut. Now I'm gonna install this through the middle. Just like that. Then this cap goes on. Drop the bolt. So to put this on, okay. Now that all the springs, there are 5 of them. Then the screws that hold it on, compress the spring and start threading it in just a little bit. Then I'll start another one. Just barely. Now we'll start tightening down all the way. Until it stops. To install the RTV onto the surface, I'm going to make sure it's clean and ready for. I have this surface all prepped and this surface all prepped. Although I'm going to put this seal in, which is the Kickstarter seal. I'm going to grease the inside of the seal, just like the rest of them. And I'll use the zip tie to kind of spread it around. And scrape off excess grease. Looks good. Make sure it's nice and lined up. Okay. Okay. The seal is tapped in. I think this is ready to go on. Put some gasket maker on this surface and put the cover on. Have a coating across the whole surface. Now I'm gonna grab the top. This is the Kickstart shaft. That side's in. Yeah, so is that side. So now I'm gonna do it finger tight, and I get to use this. The clutch cover bolt layout. Now I'll just do it till it barely touches, and then like a quarter more. And then I'll wipe up some of the excess RTV that's sticking out. It does say on the tube to wait an hour while it's finger tight and spewing out the edges a little bit. And then 90 minutes later, you tighten them down. Or an hour, not 90 minutes. 90 minutes is when you can use it. Sure hope this doesn't leak. So all the screws are barely finger tight. Now we can wipe off some of the excess. Could probably use some brake cleaner or something to make it easier. Yeah. So I guess we'll let this sit for an hour and then tighten all the screws down. But while we're waiting, we can do some other stuff. Here is the carburetor flange, which goes onto here, which will push on to that rotary valve cap before. Just tighten these two screws down. And now we wait. Another thing I can do while I'm waiting for this to be done is put the drain plug in. Here is the correct length drain plug and a brand new crush washer. Like an aluminum one. So let's put that over that. And this is a 17mm head. Okay. Looks pretty good. I got a lot done today. In this part, I cleaned the cases, took the flywheel off, changed all the seals that I had except one, and got this clutch cover on. All the stuff under the clutch cover. I think I did a lot. The next video will probably be the carburetor, putting it in, oil pump, and the top cover over this one, and the clutch worm thing, and actually putting it inside the frame. So if you guys want to see that, please subscribe, like, and I'll see you guys next time.